So welcome back to the On the Blue Line podcast. If you are listening to this introduction, you've most likely found us on our YouTube channel. If you would just take a minute and please subscribe to our channel as well as click the notification button so that you find out when we have new content coming out. You know, it's been a few weeks, actually about 6 of them, since our last episode released. We took a little bit of break due to lots of reasons, one of them being the world falling apart. But we're coming back with some of the episodes that were recorded in early September, and then we're going to work our way into new content. So the first of that group is a good friend, someone that I'm getting to know, Kris Babino. I actually have the privilege of working with Kris at a local law enforcement academy where we can work with those coming into this industry. So I know a lot of my listeners have reached out and they've said, hey, we really love some of the content. I'm thinking about getting into law enforcement, and I really want to know more about what to expect and what things I should do. This episode is for you. Take a time, listen to this. It's a long one. It's about an hour and a half. I'm going to split it up into 2 video episodes. So either listen to the podcast, which is really available anywhere that podcasts are available, or be sure to check out this video, and there will be a part 1 and a part 2 version to it. So without taking any more time, here's this week's guest, Kris Babino. Well, Kris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Wayne.
You know, I'm glad we could finally make this happen. You know, we've been talking about this since months before the 15 days to flatten the curve.
Yes, we've been trying to make this happen for quite some time, and some other people have hampered our plans significantly, but I'm glad we're doing it now.
I am too. And since that's been like 163 days since the 15 days to flatten the curve, it's been a little while, we'll just say.
Yeah, it has. And I don't know how flat we're going to get this curve because, like you said, it was 15 days and, hey, just do your part and 6 foot, wear your mask. In 15 days, it's going to be great. And now we're half a year into this, and I don't even know where the curve is anymore. We go the wrong way down the aisles of Publix, my wife and I, and we don't even wear masks anymore.
Yeah. Well, I came out with a mask this week that actually has the eagle from the logo on it. And I called it a Because Lord Fauci Commands mask. So I wanted to make sure that I had something out there, while we wait for these 15 days to end.
I have one that says, warning, this mask will not protect you or me from COVID-19. And then I've got another one that says, this is the most useless thing I've ever spent money on. So yes. Obviously, I wear those when I'm around town and absolutely have to when I get mask shamed.
Yes. I love it. And we'll get more into that as we go. But I've known you for a while, and I love your sense of humor, and I love the conversation. I really think this is going to go somewhere. Let me start. I always start out with get to know you questions. And in fact, one recent episode, I didn't do them. And all of a sudden, I started getting a bunch of comments and stuff. You didn't ask your normal questions. You ask everybody. So I don't want to disappoint my one fan that had threw that out there. So let me make sure I ask these. Is it coffee or tea, Kris?
It's tea.
Tea, really?
I don't do coffee. Everybody laughs at me when I describe it this way, but in my opinion, coffee tastes like somebody burned the beans and then soaked them in water, and that's what you drink. And essentially that's what it is. But it's disgusting. And I've had everybody, they're like, try cold and put cream in. I can't stand coffee. It's if I'm going to drink something hot, it's tea.
When you use the word roast, it sounds better than burn, right?
Right, but it doesn't taste like it's roasted. It tastes like it's burned. I think it's disgusting. I never, after doing this for 20 years, people have tried, and I try not even to do the energy drinks, but sometimes you have to do something to get some caffeine. But yeah, it's tea all the way with a good shot of honey.
There you go. And I do drink tea, believe it or not. It's very rarely. It's usually just that sleepy time tea, at the end of the day, something to low caffeine, no caffeine as the situation may be. But it's funny. I love coffee. I'm definitely a coffeeaholic. And yet now my brother and sister will drink a little bit of coffee, but no one else in my family drank it growing up. So it certainly wasn't something I learned within my household for sure.
Yeah. I think everybody in my family drinks coffee except me. My wife drinks coffee like I drink water, but no, I just don't do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of on that same plane as your wife, I think, when it comes to my coffee intake. Yeah. It's probably not good. What's your
best purchase ever?
What's your favorite place, or where's your favorite place to have that tea?
Well, Well, typically teas toward the end of the night kind of a thing. I mean, I made some for this because I just thought it would go great with the fire and the suit. But yeah, typically at the end of the night, my wife and I will sit on the couch and we both break out our books and we'll read toward the end of the night before bed and just drink the tea. So in the living room on the couch while we're reading.
So, and I want to point this out for my listeners who are listening to the audio and not catching this on YouTube, which I always definitely go to YouTube or to our IGTV or Facebook TV accounts and watch it. But Kris, who you're going to get to know throughout this episode, is sitting here in a fine suit with a nice tie in front of a beautiful roaring fireplace. I mean, it really is a picturesque image, probably mid-December, what you'd be thinking, instead of August in the state of Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't forget to mention, Wayne, like I told you before, through the miracle of Zoom, I don't have any pants on. So this is working. So if anything, maybe that'll entice some people to go to YouTube and just check it out. Obviously, you can't see that I don't have any pants on, but this works.
I hope they do. And, you know, that whole air conditioning, it works. As long as the lower half is cooler and the top half, you know, it really balances it out.
The happy balance. Yeah.
What is, you got any best or worst travel story?
Best or worst travel story? Let's see. Worst would probably be when I was coming back to Florida from Minnesota, and they had one security checkpoint open. The flight got rearranged. We had to sit there at the desk with the lady typing on the keys, like in that Ben Stiller movie, Meet the Parents. And we ran across the airport. I didn't even have time to put my belt back on, and they were closing the gate as we were running up. And then I got on the plane and I was dripping wet because I ran through the airport. That was probably the worst. I don't do a lot of traveling. We did the family trip to Alaska. My mom took us all to Alaska, and that was a great trip. And you know, it's funny because I recently got married, and my wife and I, we try to plan these little tiny getaways. And the first one we did was to Tallahassee, and we had these plans, and she was going to run a marathon, and it fell through, and we winged it for the entire weekend. And it was probably one of the best trips that I've ever been on. We drove up, we talked in the car the whole way there, and we just kind of, hey, let's go try and do this, and let's go do that. And that was probably one of the most memorable ones that I had. It was just, you know, minimal planning went into it, and everything, the planning that was there went by the wayside, and we just went with it, and it was great.
Yeah. And, you know, I've had a couple of those opportunities as well. And it's funny how you can plan these huge trips, these big expensive vacations, go do the tourist thing, whatever that may be for you, and spend all this money and it not nearly be as good as that 3-day impromptu weekend or whatever it may be that you had no idea was going to happen. It just fell together so nicely.
Yeah. Funny how that works out.
It is. And it's usually more it's more the rule than the exception, it seems.
And then it kind of seems like, it's almost like every trip after that, you're chasing that, you know, you're chasing that feeling. And no matter how hard you try to chase it, it's almost, you can't really, you still have a good time, but you really can't duplicate it. It's just, it's almost like it's set a standard that it's hard to try to duplicate. You're chasing after it, but something about it, that one trip, it's hard to duplicate.
I think there's a life lesson in there somewhere, right? I mean, the harder we chase after things and the less we just live life and kind of work within, just in general, you know, we just kind of work within what is given to us, do the best we can and strive forward. It seems to go a little better than when we're chasing and when we're constantly trying to make something happen that isn't within the plan of what our life may be.
I think it's a happy balance. You have to kind of balance that out, because I do think that no matter what you're doing, you need to always strive to be better. You need to have some sort of a goal that you're always chasing. But that being said, I think that when you reach your goals, you need to take some time to enjoy that goal that you've reached. Not a long time, you know, and once you've reached it, enjoy it, live in it for a little bit, and then, okay, I've succeeded in that. What's my next goal? And that's what I think what keeps us growing as people. I don't know if that's how deep we were going to get with that, but I guess that's a life lesson that I've kind of learned. You know, you set a goal, achieve the goal, bask in that moment, but don't get sloppy. Don't get, don't get so comfortable that you're not striving to continue on to the next goal or to always continue getting better. So I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to, but like you said, you have to live in the moment, enjoy what you have, but always try to improve yourself and reach those goals.
No, I love how you said that, and I agree. It's that balance between the two. Because if it's all or nothing, you're going to run yourself ragged. If you're on this side of the equation, if you're on the other side of the equation, you're never going to accomplish anything because you don't have any goals. And if you do have goals, they're not clear with your actions, and yeah, you can end up going down some other roads. Let me go back to the Alaska trip real quick. Was that one of the cruise line type things, or did you guys get a cabin, or what was that?
No, that was a cruise. So we flew to Seattle, and we spent probably about 2 days wandering around Seattle, which was neat. Went to the market and saw the guys throwing the fish and everything. And then we got on a cruise ship and we sailed up to Alaska. We hit 3 different ports: Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway, I think it was. And that was actually pretty neat. We did some they call them excursions, but we went and saw a glacier, and we saw the dog sled thing. My sister and her family did the whole, I think they did a kayaking thing. We took a train up to Canada. So it was actually pretty neat. We were we were the youngest people that were on the cruise because it was a lot of older folks, retired folks, but my mom's always wanted to go. And that was kind of a gift to the whole family for her to take us. And that was probably, we're going on probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. But if anybody has the opportunity to go to Alaska, that place is absolutely beautiful. I really recommend it. But the cruise is the way to go because, you've got places to stay, and obviously you've got the food. And we did the alcohol package, and it was something stupid. It was like $400 or $500 for the alcohol, pretty much all you can drink, as long as your alcohol is under $12 a drink. And then as soon as I got on the boat and I did that, I found a bar that was kind of out of the way, and I found the bartender, and I slipped him a 50 and said, "Remember me?" And all my drinks were under $12. So I think that cruise line lost money on that deal.
Nice. That definitely sounds like a good time. Yeah, that's on the bucket list, is to make it out there to Alaska. I've heard really good things from guys that I work with who've been stationed out there in the military, and some family members that did exactly what you're describing. And yeah, I hear it's just absolutely stunning.
So let me ask you this, Wayne. You said, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm going to flip the script. You said it's on your bucket list, right?
Yeah.
So when's the projected date? When's the cruise going to happen? Like what's stopping you from going?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is absolutely. For me to answer that question, because I like where you're going with it, it's on a list with several other things. So last year, I knocked out going to Wyoming for the first time, which was also on that list. Definitely, it's going to be, since none of us know the date or time for the end of that bucket list. I think that's a great question. And so it's probably, I'm hoping, within the next couple of years, but it will depend a lot on this business and where I'm at as well. Because one of the other big things, as many of my listeners know, is I love the American West. At least I love the American West now, before California moves into what I call the American West. But that's part of it too, is we'll see what direction this business goes, and if I'm looking at flying to Alaska from Florida or flying there from Wyoming.
Right. Okay.
So, but that's a good question. And that's the problem with that kind of thinking, is a lot of people say it's on the bucket list and we've got all these things we want to do one day. And then here they are 70 years old, or the bad news comes that you've got 6 weeks, like sadly an acquaintance that is a friend of our family, and now he's gone. And so anything on that to-do list isn't going to happen, not in this world, at least.
Yeah. And again, I bring up balance because there's got to be a happy balance, because a friend of mine, he's an advocate of credit cards, and he's big on just putting money on his credit cards. And my wife and I have actually, we're working at getting completely out of debt, and we're paying off everything, so we don't owe anybody any money. And I had this conversation with him, and he said, "Listen, if I want to go on a trip, I'm just going to go on the trip. I'm going to put it on the credit card, and I don't care. I'll worry about it later." So, like I said, there's got to be like a happy balance where, okay, trips cost money, and we, have to be smart about it. But I don't think it could be one of those things that we put off for years and years and years, because like you said, none of us are promised tomorrow. And if we can make something happen, absolutely, that's the way to go. But I'm glad you got a plan in place. That's good.
Yeah, I love that, Kris. And it's a good question. Solid question. getting debt free? Just discipline and a plan you've kind of come up with on your own, or are you following like Financial Peace University or?
So Dave Ramsey, we love him, and we've pretty much we're implementing his program with the debt snowball, and we listed everything, and we're just paying off smallest to biggest, and we're trying to we're trying to sacrifice certain things so that we've got that extra money to pay off those things. So it's been there's a learning curve to it on how you can do stuff, and for somebody who is terrible with credit cards, me, it was definitely weird when I finally paid them all off, and I called the credit card companies and I'm like, hey, you need to shut my card off. I want to deactivate it. And they were like, well, because one card I had from when I was in college in 1998, I was walking around University of Central Florida, and there was some good looking girl by the library. She's like, hey, you want a free t-shirt? I'm like, free t-shirt? Sure. What do I do? She's like, just sign up for this credit card. I'm like, okay. So I signed the paperwork, and she's like, all right, great. And I'm thinking, I don't even think I had a job at the time, because I worked one day at Kmart, and I was like, this is stupid. I'm not doing this. So I put, ridiculous amount of money. What do you make? Like $3,000 a year or something. Next thing I know, I got a credit card in the mail, and I'm thinking, oh, so I had that from 90. And the lady's like, you've had this card since 98, and there's no annual fees. Just hang on to it. And I told her, I said, listen, you can see the history on that card. Clearly, I'm not a responsible credit card holder. So just shut it off. And it was huge, because I've always been one of those, I'll just put it on the credit card. I'll just put it on the credit card. And to shut those off was, it was scary, but it's such a huge relief, because owing money is such a stress for me. And it was literally ruining my life, because I was constantly, all right, I got to make this bill. I got to make this bill. And then I got to work off, I got to work an extra job so that I can make sure that I've got the money for this, that, and the other thing. But taking that step, as soon as it was done, I was a little bit worried about it, but now it's probably been about a month, maybe 2 months since I've done it. And it's great to not have that bill coming in. It's definitely a weight off my chest. So we're working on it. We've got a plan in place, and hopefully we'll be debt free here in a little while.
Awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, I love Dave. Kind of gets a bad rap in some circles, but I really love Dave Ramsey's stuff and his heart in it. I get that there may be some situations. The problem is everybody always thinks they're smarter than a program anyway. So that's part of what you run into. But I'm not also one who's willing to admit that maybe not everything is one size fits all. However, his program, when you're willing to actually do it, you're going to learn a lot, like you said. And being honest, I would have to say credit cards can definitely be the enemy for me, and my discipline isn't always there. So what I really like about Dave's program is that it actually kind of teaches you something about yourself and about something that you probably need to change if you're going to get ahead, whether it's in the financial world and those concepts, or just in general.
Yeah, no, like he says, in his program, they talk to people that are millionaires, and they all have that one thing in common, where they were out of debt, they paid off their house. And so, like you said, everybody wants to modify a program, but I mean, there's a reason why it's structured the way that it is, and there's a reason why people are paying him millions of dollars to tell them how to get out of debt. It works if you stick with it. And it's funny that you mentioned how people like to change programs. So there's a program that my wife and I are doing. It's a 75-day program. This guy named Andy Frisella he owns First Form, and he owns some supplement companies and stuff like that. So she turned me on to it because she's a fitness nut, and I was just round. But she turned me on to it, and his program, the one that we're doing, it's called 75 Hard, and it's 75 days, and it's got some rules to it. You can't have any alcohol. You have to do 2 workouts a day. Both have to be 45 minutes. One has to be outside. You have to drink a gallon of water a day. You have to stick to a diet. You have to take a picture, a progress picture. You can't cheat. And he talks about it in his podcasts about how people want to modify it and be like, well, what if I did it this way? What if I did it that way? And he brings up, he's like, listen, there's a reason why you're at the location you're at in your life. There's a reason why you're where you are. Clearly you've modified stuff so badly, or you haven't implemented anything. And the whole 75 Hard thing isn't really supposed to be a diet or a weight loss or a fitness thing. It's supposed to be a mental toughness kind of a thing to show you how mentally tough you are. It's just kind of funny how you talk about people wanting to modify it, because he says the same thing. And I don't know, I just kind of go along with it. I'm like, all right, this is what the guy says to do. There are certain things I'd love to modify, like the whole no alcohol thing would be great to modify.
Right.
But I get the point, and it's definitely working. So if you do something by the letter, it's going to work. Follow the instructions as they're written. You should succeed.
And for any of my listeners who are not aware, Andy Frisell, I believe his podcast is called American AF, and I'll link that up. But yeah, that's a great podcast that you're referring to where he goes over the 75 hard program. How many days into it are you guys?
38 days, I think. We're at 38. So.
And you're maintaining the 2 workouts a day, huh?
Yeah, I did 6 miles this morning, and then after this is over, we'll go out on the porch and we'll work out. I can tell you that it helps that she's doing it with me, because together we're stronger than if I was just doing it by myself. Because if she was sitting there enjoying a glass of wine and I'm sitting over there sipping on tea, I'd probably be hurting. But we do it together, and that's what it really helps, is just the fact that we're doing it together. So I'm supporting her, she's supporting me. But yeah, we're 38 days. So yes, I think yesterday was the halfway point, and we're excited to see where we're at 75 days, and we've already got day 76 planned out. We're gonna do brunches and lunches and dinners, and they're all gonna involve margaritas and
as they should.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, that you've set a goal, you've reached the goal. Now you take a moment to enjoy and celebrate what you achieved. And then it'll be that much easier the next time you set yourself up for a hard goal. I don't know if you mentioned, there's also 10 pages of reading a day, correct, in that program?
Yes, there's 10 pages of reading a day. Like I said, that's where we, at night when we're wrapping up the night, typically we'll get those done. And it's kind of funny because I was never really a reader in school. I did all the reading that was mandatory. I was a little disappointed that The Catcher in the Rye wasn't about a baseball game. I didn't like doing the reading, then reading the books. You're like, I remember reading Pygmalion and I'm thinking, why am I reading this stuff? And with this with this program, you have to do the reading. And it's funny because I'm actually finding myself enjoying the reading. Now I've got some books that I think some people would like. I've been reading this one book that I just bought. It's an introduction to constitutional law. And I think it's fascinating stuff, but I think some people would look at it and just think that it's absolutely boring. But they started way back when the country was first started, and they were talking about when George Washington was president, and how one guy tried to sue another state because he didn't get something he ordered from the state. So, I try to read stuff that I enjoy. I read a book not too long ago I didn't enjoy all that much that was recommended to me, but I got through it and I read it anyway. But anyway, it's neat because I was always one to sit in front of the television. I was always one to turn on movies. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a movie that I can't say a movie quote from. When my brothers and I get together for Thanksgiving and Easter, we literally will have conversations at the dinner table that just involve quotes from movies. I would just sit in front of the TV at the end of the night and veg out. And I've reduced all my cable channels. I got rid of all the sports packages and all that other stuff because I don't agree with what's going on with them, and got rid of a bunch of the Showtimes and Cinemaxes. And it's actually kind of nice. It's peaceful to just shut the television off and just sit there and read for, whatever, 10 pages or however long we want to read before we start dozing off to go to bed. It's just interesting because trying to follow that program, I was forcing myself to do it. Now I find it where I'm actually kind of excited to sit down with the book.
It's awesome. Yeah, I encourage anyone who's interested to check out that 75 Hard website. Are you tracking it in the app, or are you doing it the old school way with paper and pen?
No, I have the app, which is neat, because with the app, you can actually just upload your photo because you have to take the progress picture every day.
Right.
So I think the app was like $4 or something.
Yeah,
but
it is. It's like $2.99 or $3.99.
Yeah, in the big scheme of things, the money I've wasted in my lifetime, what is that? Especially if it's going to better me. But I follow along in the app, and it's neat because at the end of the night, it'll remind me. It'll say, hey, don't forget to complete all your. And typically, it's already done. I've just forgotten to click the little boxes off. And you can scroll through the pictures because you take the progress picture and you can see a transition from day one to where you are whenever you are in the program. So I invested in the app. And then I don't know if you know about it, but not only does he have the 75 hard, but he's got 3 phases after 75 hard. You got phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3.
Okay.
And the way that it works, for anybody that's not familiar with it, on the 75 hard, if you get to day 70 and you forget to complete something, it's something as simple as you didn't take a progress picture. You have to go all the way back to day 1 and start all over again. So then he's got phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and there's a prerequisite for phase 1 is to complete the 75 hard, and then phase 2 is to complete phase 1. And he's got it timed out where the last day of phase 3 is the day before it would have been a year that you started 75 hard. So if you fail to do something for that month of phase 3, you go all the way back to 75 hard and start at day 1 to work your way through. So it's a little diabolical, but I'm kind of excited about it because it's kind of, it's a challenge and an adventure. So, and the phases are a little bit different. The phases, some of the things is like you have to do random acts of kindness. Another one is just complete, talk to a complete stranger and it's not just hey, how are you doing? You're supposed to engage that person in a conversation and get to know something about that person. So it's pretty neat. And, he keeps some of the other stuff with the workouts and the no alcohol and the reading and everything, but he tacks on some other, one of the things that I think is interesting is he had to take a 5-minute, or I don't even know it's 5 minutes, but an ice cold shower, 5 minutes, ice cold.
Interesting.
I thought you just turn a shower to cold, jump in and take your shower for the day. But my wife listened to his podcast about it. He talks about how he takes a regular shower and then he'll slowly turn the dial down to where it's cold and he'll sit there for 5 minutes. And again, it's geared toward increasing your mental toughness, which I get, but that I think that's going to be rough for me, especially here in wintertime, because that's cold, man. Especially in the house when it's, and I was born and raised in Florida, so for me, cold is anything below 60 degrees.
Right.
But in the winter, when it gets cold and I jump in the shower, I find it hard to get out of there because I don't want to step out into the bathroom where now it's cold, and I'm not a fan of the cold. But we'll see how it works out.
Very cool. Yeah. So after a workout, especially if it's a night that I work, I do try to knock out a partially cold shower, but I don't know about 5 minutes. I do more like a minute to 2 minutes, just try to bring my body temperature down before I throw all the gear on and start sweating again. But yeah, I don't know about 5 minutes. I wasn't aware. So probably 2 weeks ago, I listened to one of his podcasts because unfortunately, I just hit and miss what I can catch these days with when I have a few minutes. And he mentioned to the guys in the room there that they had finished 75 hard and they were working on whatever was next. So yeah, that must be the subsequent ones that you're referring to.
Yeah, those are the phases.
Very cool. So I know we're already at like the midway point, and let me just start where I normally do in the beginning. Let's just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, what you do, kind of introduce yourself to the listeners.
Well, I went to Catholic school from the 3rd grade on, which was interesting because, I went to public school, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Then my parents yanked me out of there and put me in Catholic school, and I absolutely hated it. Every day we said the rosary, we had to kneel next to our desk, and I begged them to get me out of Catholic school, and they didn't. But I'm glad that they didn't. I think I got a better education having gone to Catholic school. So I went all the way up from 3rd grade all the way up through high school. I graduated from a Catholic school in Clearwater. And then from there, I moved over to Orlando, and I went to college over there for a year. My father got sick, so I dropped out of college. I moved back home to help my mom with the family, and I needed a job. And my brother-in-law happened to be in law enforcement, and he said, "Hey, look at this." And I thought, I don't know about that. So I looked into it, and it's kind of funny because I didn't do a ride along or anything. The extent of my knowledge with law enforcement was watching Cops. And that was really it. I didn't really have any dealing with law enforcement. So, but I put myself through the academy, and then I got a job with a smaller local agency, and I worked there for a few years. And then I worked full time, and I went to school part time so I could have enough college credits to work for a bigger agency that requires you to have so many college credits. And I've been doing this job since I was 21, and I've got a little ways to go before I can finish it up and close that chapter of my life. But yeah, hobbies, I kind of let go by the wayside because I got consumed with work. I was always working. And if I wasn't working, I was teaching at the academy, and it just consumed my life. And, it's weird how this coronavirus thing happened because it was like a wake up call for me. It forced me to slow down. The academy shut down. All the extra jobs that I was working shut down, and you were forced to take your days off. And, it reminded me that I actually have hobbies, and it reminded me that I have projects I need to do around the house. So as far as like hobbies are concerned, I've got a bunch of Jeeps in the yard that I work on, but I usually just me hitting them with something and cursing. I work out a lot. That's something that I used to work out a little bit, but now I work out a lot because I actually enjoy doing it. It's great therapy. Just an average guy.
Very cool. Yeah. In your law enforcement career, any specific positions or anything of interest?
Uh, I was, I kind of went all over the place. We had bicycles, so I was on the bicycles for a while. It was funny because you tell people you're on the bikes, like, oh, what are you driving, Harleys? I'm like, nah, it's like a Schwinn, like they thought you were on like a motor. It's like, no, I'm not, I'm on a bicycle. They're like, oh, and then the jokes comes like, what do you put people in the basket? You're like, yeah,
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 yeah. Put a little.
I'm in a basket. I wear the computer on my backpack. I did a like a street anti-crime squad where you were in plain clothes and you drove around and you picked up prostitutes and you bought street level drugs. I did some time in training and I really loved my time in training. I like teaching. It's definitely something I'm passionate about. And when I was in training, I had the opportunity to train people that were already officers, and I had the opportunity to train people that were just hired. Some of them had previous experience, some of them had just graduated the academy. So I did some training. I spent a lot of my time just on the road. I did a few years in our aviation unit. That was kind of fun. I was the observer for the in the helicopter. Spent some time doing that, and that was seeing it from a whole different standpoint. It's a whole nother challenge because
I'm sure.
you can work an area for 10 years, and then when you see it from a bird's eye view, you have to memorize all the roads again because you're seeing them completely different. Your brain has to convert. All right, I was seeing it from ground level. Now I'm seeing it from bird's eye view, and you have to reprogram yourself. So I did that for a little while, and now I'm just back to just doing patrol, which some people don't like it. Everybody's always trying. We talked about chasing, that happiness or chasing other things, and really, I don't mind being on patrol. I think that it's the backbone of a lot of agencies, and
Amen.
I have a lot of fun. It gives you a lot of adventure. It's not just the same thing. You're not stuck behind a desk. If one day you want to go out and be proactive, you be proactive. If one day you don't want to be proactive, you don't have to be proactive. You got a lot of flexibility as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And people do kind of give patrol a bad rap sometimes, and yet patrol really is the lifeblood of the agency. I mean, it is the face of what we do in law enforcement, and you really do have to give a lot of resources and a lot of kudos to what those guys do. I miss being a detective. I enjoyed that end of it because it's more my personality, that deep work. I can just lose myself in a case file. But there is something to be said for patrol, and I really like that interaction with the public and the ability to kind of be the face of the agency.
Okay, so I have to tell a backstory just to make a comparison because that's the way that I operate. When I moved back here after my first year in college at University of Central Florida, I needed a job, and a friend of mine worked at Home Depot down in South Tampa. So I thought I was high and mighty because I went to Catholic school and I had at least a year of college under my belt. And I tried applying at a Home Depot, and I'm thinking, all right, I can get like lumber or electrical. What am I going to do? And they said, listen, we're going to offer you a position. I said, great. And they said, listen, this is actually a very important position. And as soon as I heard that, I put on my boots because I knew it was going to get pretty high. I wasn't the smartest guy in the world, but I'm also not an idiot. Oh, this is the very important position, and it's the first person that people see when they come to our store and the last person that people see. And you really can set the tone. And I'm like, yeah, what position is it? And they said, well, you'd be out in the yard getting carts out in the parking lot. And I'm thinking, I'm not driving all the way. It would have been an hour drive, easy. I'm not driving an hour just to get carts. And the reason why I bring that story up is, like you're saying, patrol, in my opinion, I think that has the most impact on the citizens because when they call 911 or even when they call just to report something, the patrol officer is the one who shows up. And that officer and the way they treat that citizen can dictate how that citizen thinks about any cop, every cop they ever come in contact with. If they get pulled over by an officer or a deputy, and that deputy is rude and just mean, well, now they're going to associate that with every other officer or deputy they run into. Or if somebody comes to their house to take a burglary report and that officer doesn't do their job or is just rude or mean, then they're going to remember that. That's going to stick with them. And, I hate to say it, but they're going to stereotype all the rest of the officers. Now on the other side of the coin, if that officer just goes out of their way to try to be pleasant, to be polite, to do everything they possibly can, that's going to leave a lasting impression with the citizen. And it's just kind of funny because, again, people downplay the patrol thing, but the way I look at it is I'm in one of the most important positions in the entire department because the way that I treat people dictates how they're going to think about not only me, but every other agency that they ever deal with. You know, you get pulled over by that one bad cop, and every other cop is a jerk. But if you get pulled over by somebody and they're pleasant, and listen, nobody wants to get pulled over. I don't like getting pulled over. Nobody wants to get a ticket. But if you can make it as painless as possible, explain why you did it, and you know, I think that you can change the way people think of just cops in general. And I think that is such an important position. And again, people they don't look at it that way. They want to get the detective spot. They want to get the sergeant spot. They want to get the lieutenant spot. But what they don't realize is we kind of set the tone. And even with taking a report, if you take a burglary report, if you do a bang up job taking a burglary report and you include everything you need to include, so the detective doesn't have to do all that much more work and ask this and that and the other thing, again, you've dictated how that case is going to go, because maybe that detective's got a huge caseload and they don't have the time to check for video. They don't have the time to go interview witnesses and all this other stuff. If the officer has done all that work and put a nice bow on it and hands it to the detective, you can essentially make or break a case. So I think patrol is one of the most important positions in the department.
I couldn't agree with you more, Kris. Years ago when I was in landscaping, businesses that I worked with and so forth, and the one that I ran, were all in the design build field. But I worked with another company who did a lot of maintenance, and he did a lot of turf and so forth in the north up in Indiana. And the person he would hire for his front desk position, so secretarial or phone answer or whatever you want to call that person, male or female, that was in there, he would call that position the director of first impressions, because it may seem menial that this person sits behind the desk and they're taking messages and so forth, but they really are the face of that business, and they're the ones that everyone has interaction with. And if you put that person on a pedestal and make them understand the significance of that job, it's going to affect every other part of your business. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's really no different in law enforcement. I mean, they really are the directors of first impressions. They're the ones that are going to set the tone, be it at an investigative level or on a personal level, with people that will go, I don't know how many times even now, I've been doing this 8 years, that I'll run into someone from years ago when I was on patrol, and they'll say something about remembering, hey, I remember this interaction, or hey, and it's typically positive, because you have that opportunity to make a difference in that couple moments that you're with them.
I think it also gives you the opportunity to undo something someone's done. I've been in interactions with folks before where, you know, you conduct a traffic stop, you walk up to the car, and the person immediately, just off the bat, is you know, they're confrontational, they're angry, and you know, they're yelling at you or whatever. You're trying to explain why you stopped them, and they're just yelling at you. You know, I've walked back to my car, made sure that everything's copacetic as far as their license and wants and wants. And then you walk back up to the car and you hand them back their license, go, hey, listen, just keep an eye out for the stop sign next time, have a great day. And they're bewildered. They look at you and they're like, wait, you're not giving me a ticket? And I'll tell you, did you want one? Well, no, but normally I get a ticket. And I go, yeah, I get that. And you're gonna deal with people. And if you approach them the way you approach me, then yeah, they're more than likely they're gonna give you a ticket. But it's kind of like my way of explaining to them, listen, we don't all operate the same way. And maybe they were given a ticket they didn't think they deserved, or maybe the cop that gave them a ticket was rude about it. And I try to change what they think of just law enforcement in general. Yeah, could I give them a ticket? Yeah, I can give anybody a ticket, but is it really worth it? What if I can now make that person change their perception of law enforcement based on, you know, just being polite? Just, you know, I tell everybody this, especially when I teach at the academy. I think of the movie Roadhouse, right, with Patrick Swayze.
Oh yeah.
And he's talking to all the bouncers, and they're like, well, if there's a fight, he goes, be nice, you know, just be nice. And you can do so much by being nice. I think that, you know, again, I can't say it enough. I hate having a harp on it, but it just gives us such an ability to convince or to show the public who we really are, just being on patrol. And, you know, you can undo something that somebody has done. Maybe that person was stopped 4 times, and the cop, all 4 times they yelled at the cop got mad about it, and, oh, I'm going to give you a ticket. He yelled at me, I didn't give him a ticket, and then, you know,
Yeah.
That's not how it works. You know, I think it helps out a lot.
I think that analogy is powerful in general. I've used it as well. I probably won't get the quote exactly right, but for Patrick Swayze, it's essentially be nice until it's time to not be nice. And that is really kind of the crux or the core of use of force training. I mean, if you go into it as being nice until it's time to not be nice, you're going to be much farther ahead. And those situations, a lot of times you're going to be able to control just in the beginning, because you're still doing your job. You're just being nice about it. And then yeah, there is a point where it's no longer time to be nice and we have to do what we have to do. That's part of what our job and our calling. But that's a good perspective, I find, and something that I've even gone over with my newer officers as they've joined.
It's funny though, because I can't speak, obviously I can't speak for you, I can speak for me. I didn't learn the whole be nice tactic until I had years under my belt. I remember being out there and I thought, hey, I'm the police, you got to listen to what I say. And if somebody questioned me or whatever, you don't question me. It took me years and years and years of fighting people, my uses of force being questioned, because if you have so many uses of force within a certain period, they sit down with you and they want to go over the uses of force just to make sure that you're not doing some things you're not supposed to do. But it took me years to just learn to be nice. I wouldn't, if you remember the movie, they ask him like several times, he says it, be nice, be nice. Finally, he goes, until it's not. Well, I eliminated all those be niceties, and it was like I was nice, and then it was time not to be nice. And in my old age,
ask, tell, make, like literally a 3-step plan.
Right. Oh, and it's funny because as it is now, I've learned the hard way, and I wish someone would have told me when I was starting off, hey, listen, here's what's going to happen. Just be nice and be nice. And now I find that most people, they just want to get stuff off of their chest. So yeah, go ahead. Whatever you want to get off your chest. You want to yell at me? Go ahead and yell. That's fine. I'm not taking it personally. You're yelling at the uniform, or you're yelling at the badge, you're yelling at the car. You're not yelling at me. I get it. And usually it winds up going great. You're talking about uses of force. And so ideally, I would love to be able to just toss somebody some handcuffs and go, hey, put those on. I don't want to have to fight anybody. And I think that you can get a lot accomplished just by talking to somebody. I read a book, this is before I had to read books every night, but I read a book called Verbal Judo, and it taught me a lot about how to talk to people. And I got a book around here somewhere. It's like how to make friends and influence people. And that was recommended to me as well, which is apparently it's an older book. It was written in like the 20s or 30s, but it's still applicable today. And, I want to read that one as well, but you can accomplish so much just by talking to folks. And, that's what we try to stress at the Academy. Just talk to somebody, explain why you're doing what you're doing, keep your, maintain your officer safety, but, still try to use your, I tell them all the time, use your words, say what you want to say, use your words. There may be a time where words aren't going to work, but, my uncle had this phrase he used to tell me all the time growing up. He said, it's easier to go from being a nice guy to a jerk than it is to go from being a jerk to a nice guy. And just start off as being a nice guy and see where it gets you, and just don't give up. Now, again, there are exceptions where words aren't going to work and you're going to have to go hands-on, but really, does it hurt to use words? Again, as long as you're maintaining officer safety and you're not letting your guard down. I mean, I don't know about you guys, I get paid by the hour. So if I got to talk to somebody for an hour to avoid one of us having to go to the hospital, I'll talk to them for an hour. I don't really care.
Absolutely. And I've said the same things to my guys. I mean, now this is a little bit different of a scenario, what you're describing here, but just in general, a lot of times we can slow things down once we have them under control. And then we can make sure that we maintain that safety, both for us and for whomever we're trying to work with. And like you said, the whole paid by the hour thing, I mean, but it's true. And even if we weren't, time is on your side. Usually, now there are exceptions to that. That's why I'm adding that caveat. But in general, time is on your side. Use it effectively for the safety of them and yourself. And I think that's something that's so important, and something that keeps from, I want to be careful saying this because we can't control everything that happens out there, but it's one way to keep from incidents ending up on the national news and seeing some of the insanity that we're seeing, even though some of the more recent cases really would argue the different side of that point, if that makes any sense.
Right. And absolutely. And I also think it helps because we've, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And in that time, I've noticed a change in just supervision in general, or leadership in general. I remember in the very beginning doing this job, it was, hey, there's calls holding, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
A lot of those old time supervisors have since retired. And now you've got the newer era of supervisors. And they realize that, maybe the cop needs a little bit of extra time to get their mission accomplished. And they're not harping on you, hey, we got calls holding. They understand, okay, he's got a job to do, she's got a job to do. I'm going to let them do their job. They might swing by the call just to see if you need anything. But I think that it's helped a lot. I think a lot of the supervisors realize that we need a little bit more time sometimes to try to de-escalate a situation, as opposed to making us feel like we're rushed and pressured to accomplish something. Because like you said, slowing things down, it helps you so much because you can see the big picture and things. You're not just looking through, a tube to see something, and it helps you to think, and it helps you to try to formulate a plan or come up with other options. If if plan A doesn't work, you've got plan B, plan B1, plan B2, and stuff like that. So I think a lot of that has to do with the error of supervisors too, but I might be wrong. What do I know?
I agree with you 100%. When I first came on, and again, I've only been in this 8 years, but even 8 years ago, some of the early sergeants I had were exactly what you're describing. Great people, and I learned a lot from specifically the one I'm thinking of. But he was retired Army, very gruff guy, had a heart for his guys though. Like he was just a heck of a person, and I learned a lot from him. But he was that guy where it's like, well, we can't bound these calls too long. We need to rush. We need to, move. Calls can't be on the holding screen and so forth. And I have seen in the 8 years I've been, 8.5 years I've been doing this, I've kind of seen that pendulum swing exactly what you're describing. And I think some of that is just maybe the life experience and the difference in society maybe, and kind of the understanding that the newer supervisors have, because it's a little bit different than those guys. A lot of them spent most of their career on patrol, where a lot of us have time in CID and a lot of time in, most of us have college educations, a little bit more life experience maybe in areas outside of the military and law enforcement, which is what and I've said it several times on this podcast, that's what I actually credit my mindset in law enforcement. Because when I came in, I had spent most of my adult life in some sort of career that was customer service related, whether I was selling large projects, working with solving problems on those projects, or we've talked before, we both started out early with in Kmart. So in some form or another, I've spent most of my life in customer service. So when I came into law enforcement, I really look at it as a customer service industry. Now, it may be one that doesn't always end amicably, and we may have to, the customer isn't necessarily always right in this business. However, I always try to come to it with that heart.
No, and I agree with you. I think there is a level of customer service, no matter what it is. Even if you're arresting somebody, I still think there's a level of customer service. I think there's a broad range of people who get arrested. There are people who just make legitimate mistakes, and they screwed up. And then there are people that are just legitimately evil people. And there's a bunch of people that fill in between, but that doesn't mean that no matter who they are, it doesn't mean we should not treat them with respect. I remember when I went to the academy, one of the instructors said, listen, you should treat everybody like you would want them to treat your grandfather. And I thought that was kind of interesting because my family was we were close. My grandparents lived right next door growing up. And I was like, oh, because I thought my grandfather was like a second dad. And that kind of resonated with me, and I've really tried. And I'd be lying if I said I did it all the time and I never faltered on it, because there were times. I am human and I have flaws, but I've tried really hard to do that, because somebody runs from you, you have to chase them, you tackle them, you handcuff them. Okay, they're under control, they're in custody, it's over and done with. I hear stories about how, we did this or we did that, and I don't understand the point of that, because like you said, there's going to be a level of customer service in it no matter what. And I'm not going to sit there and ask the guy if he wants to stop and get a burger on the way to booking, but I'm going to treat him like a human being. I'm going to lower the windows, or I'm going to turn the air conditioning on, and if he complains, hey, my cuff this, okay, I'll check it, no problem. Because ultimately they're still a person, and we are supposed to be above all of that other nonsense of letting our emotions dictate our actions. And that's what I try to stress to the kids in the academy. No matter what, we're professionals. We need to maintain a professional attitude no matter what happens. If somebody spits in your face, well, guess what? They spit in your face. It happened. It's over with, Right. It's kind of comical, because there used to be, and I don't know how it is at your place, but I've heard that it was a rule of thumb. Somebody spits in your face, you're allowed to punch them. That's just the rule of thumb. And I'm thinking, I don't think that's I don't know where that thumb is, but I can tell you that I'm not going to practice that, for the simple fact that it's obviously it's wrong. But again, like you're saying, in customer service, and having worked at Kmart for 4 or 5 years before I started doing this job, you learn a little bit about it, but this was like a crash course in customer service. And again, in the beginning of my career, if people had to fill out an evaluation on me, it probably would have been pretty poor. But as time has gone on, I've learned that it is all about customer service. And even if somebody's complaining on you, I mean, I've had people that they don't like the service that I provided, and they're all bent out of shape, and they get mad, and they're like, well, what's your name? And hold on a minute, and I'll give them a business card with my name on it and everything else. I know some guys that are like, you can read it, it's right there. Why? Just listen, they want to
why?
Yeah. Why are you throwing fuel on the fire? If they're upset at you or for whatever, okay, listen, I'm sorry that you didn't get the response you wanted, or you're sorry this didn't go the way you went, but here's who I am, my sergeant so-and-so. If you want to give them a call, you're more than welcome to. And, customer service. And I don't know. I think it's improved over the years. I think that we've gone that way in law enforcement because it didn't used to be that way. It was the ask, tell, make. I remember going to the academy and they said that. It was either ask, tell, make, or it was a 3-strike rule. You tell somebody 3 times, after that, you're over and done with. But I think seeing cops work, I think that's changed for the better. I think that we're more geared toward customer service. You get a lot of the old time guys who complain about that. Well, that's not what this is supposed to be. Well, really, I think it is what they're supposed to be, because most of these people are tax-paying citizens. So, we essentially work for them. I always love it when they were like, I pay my taxes, I pay your salary. And then the old me would get in trouble because I'd say, listen, not for nothing, but alcohol and cigarette tax doesn't go to my salary. It's property tax, and you clearly don't own a home. But, ultimately we're working for the citizen. And some of the old time guys, and some of the newer guys, they have a hard time accepting that. They don't like that, but I think it's exactly what we do. That's why we got in this job, is to work for the citizens, is to help them out.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more, Kris. I think that that's something that, fortunately, I think, as you're saying, I think I'm seeing more and more of it. So that's the good news, is I think that is the direction law enforcement is going. You wouldn't know that if you watched the national news, but I think in reality, that is kind of my anecdotal experience in the direction we've been going.
Yeah.
You have, in my opinion, the heart of a teacher. I've known you for a while. How long have you been teaching out at the college?
I started teaching where we're teaching now. I started teaching out there probably 6 years ago, but I have been teaching since probably 2008. I was teaching at another college over in Hillsborough County, and I've been doing that I started there, I would say it's about 2008 when I first got my instructor techniques, and I started teaching. And then after instructor techniques, I immediately took the defensive tactics instructor, and then I built on that with firearms and driving. And I just, it's kind of funny because I never in a million years, I don't know, in the academy, I didn't think anything about it. Now in the academy, I remember going to the academy and I would say things in my head. I'd say, man, if this guy would just explain it this way, or if she would just say it that way, it would make it so much easier to understand, because I would be perplexed. And I'd look around and like, if I'm perplexed, there's got to be at least one other person here who's got to be a little bit confused. So I would critique him in that aspect, but I never in a million years thought that I would teach anybody, because I was, what do I know that I'm going to teach somebody?
Right.
But through doing the job for a while, you pick up some things. So I thoroughly enjoy it. If I could, if I could quit my full-time job and just live off of teaching the salary, I would do that in a heartbeat. I love doing it, and for a couple of different reasons, but one of the most important ones is I think that, and I take it personal because if I don't get to teach a class, I feel, especially with like defensive tactics or traffic stops or something, and I don't know why, and I'm not trying to insult anybody that I teach with, but I feel that I know things that I need to tell them, and those things could potentially save their life one day. I have to be there, and I have to, I feel like I'm obligated. And again, listen, I didn't invent any of this stuff. I'm teaching the same stuff everybody else is teaching, but I have such a vested interest in these cadets that are going through, and I feel like it's my way of possibly, I can't follow every cadet around after they get a job and hold a vest up to protect them and call out a bad guy, but I feel that this is the next best thing. And I love doing it. It's funny, I mentioned if I could quit that I would do it for free. I would do it for free, because I love doing it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, if I was in a position to do that and just give back, by giving hours and so forth to it, I would do it in a heartbeat, because it really is something I'm passionate about and something that I enjoy watching. And right now I'm very blessed because I get not only the opportunity to watch them in the academy, but then oftentimes a good percentage of them are now coming out to the road, and I get to see a year down the road, 2 years down the road, and see how far they've come from day one of the academy. And, when we first started talking, in legal or criminal investigations or whatever it may be, and those early conversations, to here we are 2 years down the road or a year and a half down the road, and just watching their development and their understanding on investigations. And it's awesome to watch. And I always think, if I just had a little part in that growth, then it's worth it. Then I'm doing exactly what I should be doing and what I feel that I'm called to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even the simple fact that maybe when you were teaching them, you said one thing to them that stuck in their head, and in the heat of the moment, at the worst second of their life, they remembered exactly what you said, and that potentially saved their life. You may have said something just in passing. You may have said something that you didn't really think too much about, but they heard it and they thought about it and it resonated, and maybe it culminated and it grew in their brain and it stuck there. And then in that 1 second when things could have gone bad, they remembered it and it potentially saved their life. And that 1 second, you became the most important instructor they ever had.
Yeah.
I think that everybody who teaches should be applauded, and just for the simple fact that not everybody can be a teacher. Some people try to be a teacher that really shouldn't be a teacher.
I think it helps if you have the heart of a teacher, which is something that, right. I can really tell from our conversation and previous conversations we've had that you have that heart for it. You have, the statements that you've made, it's not, hey, I have all this knowledge and I'm imparting all this knowledge. It's, hey, I have a heart to see these people succeed. And if there's something that I know that I can put out there that's going to help them, then by God, I'm going to do it. To me, that's a dichotomy. It's two different ways of looking at it. And I just love that heart. And you're right. Not everybody has that. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad teacher. And it certainly doesn't mean they're a bad person. But I think that there's a struggle there. And I remember there were some instructors I had when I started in the academy. All of them are gone now, but there were, in fact, most of them don't even have jobs in law enforcement. So whatever that tells you, but, and they didn't retire, but, those lessons that you learn, it's kind of like, it's not for everybody, but I have found one life lesson maybe I've learned is that, life has a way of kind of weeding them out as well.
For the most part, I think that, a few may slip through. But I think that's everywhere. That's not just in this job, not just with instructors. I think that's everywhere where a few slip through, and those are the ones that make everybody else kind of look bad, for lack of a better way of putting it. But yeah, some people are meant for it, some people aren't. But I applaud the people that get out there and they try to do it. Some people just, maybe they're not comfortable speaking in front of crowds. They want to do their part to try to impart the information that they have or to try to help them out. But maybe they just have a hard time speaking in front of people, or maybe they just don't have a lot of experience doing it. I've been doing it for quite some time, and I'm perfectly comfortable standing up in front of, I don't care how many people it is. It could be a group of 100 people. It could be a group of 1,000 people. I'm still going to talk the way that I talk. I don't try to speak down to people. I don't try to use big fancy words. I just, I remember for one of the graduations at the academy, the director couldn't be there, and she gave me her notes, and I'm sitting there with a whole auditorium full of people, and I was trying to read her notes, but I was ad-libbing a little bit. And, I sometimes I wonder if people think I don't take anything seriously, because I take a lot of stuff seriously, but I really prioritize what needs to be taken seriously and what I joke about a lot of stuff. Oh, yeah. If you see the Facebook memes and everything where it's like, I probably shouldn't have joked about that, but that's just what, but maybe that's just, I come up with an excuse. I go, oh, that's just how I process things. Because then people, if you use those buzzwords, like that's how I process it, then people kind of leave, oh, okay, he's thinking, they leave you alone about it.
Right.
But, I don't know. Why take so many, there's certain times to be serious, but most of the time, just life's worth living, just joke about it. So I don't know, maybe, like I said, maybe they're just not comfortable getting in front of them. I like the icebreaker, just come right off the bat and say something funny and then sets the tone, and then it's all downhill from there.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I'm not saying I'm any good at public speaking, but it's something that even now I'm not that comfortable with. But early on, I wasn't comfortable with it at all. And I had to force myself. In fact, I took instructor techniques, and I took another speech related class. The reason I went through those classes at that point had little to do with teaching. It had more to do with forcing myself to have to get up and speak in front of people, because I figured it's something I needed to work on anyway. So if I take this class, at least I have to stand up here. I have to develop at least some sort of conversation, and, for better or worse, at least it's going to make me a better person in these other, because you wouldn't know it running a podcast and so forth, but I am actually an introvert on the scale. So that is my natural bent, is to not be out there in front of everybody.
Do you think taking those classes helped, or do you think that the increased exposure to doing it helped?
Good point. Good question. I would say a little bit of both. The one that helped me the most was the teacher I had in Instructor Techniques, where you started with like the little 1 minute speech and then build up to the 3 minute speech. And they didn't give you a lot of time to think about those first ones. It was like, stand up and talk about a family situation, or, your favorite story or whatever. And you've got 60 seconds to develop it or to deliver it. That helped me immensely, because I am at my nature a planner. So I would rather, it's usually paralysis by analysis. So I'll sit there and overthink it and overthink it and overthink it and never actually get up and say anything. So for me, it was good. It was good to have to be forced to get up there and do those little speeches, and then to build upon them to, I think in the end, the last one's like 20 minutes or something on week 2. But that was a good experience for me.
Okay. Yeah. So I remember, it's funny you mentioned that, because when you're talking about that, I remember going through Instructor Techniques, and the instructor that I had for it, he actually made us bring in like an 8mm tape, and he had a camera, and he actually recorded the long one at the end, the one that you had to make a lesson plan, all that stuff for it. And it's kind of funny, because I found it a little while ago and I watched it, and, I don't watch myself teach, but I'm familiar with how I teach. I don't think I've changed my teaching method from that day one of being up there and recording it, speaking with my sarcasm and my cynicism. I don't think I've changed at all with it. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad. I mean, I think I've improved, because I've learned what not to say and what to say, but I don't really know that I've changed. And, you're talking about paralysis through analysis, where you're overthinking stuff. My problem when I teach is I'm all over the place. I'll have 12 different thoughts running through my head, but I'm trying to stay on task and follow a PowerPoint or explain what's going on. But I've got all kinds of, and it could be something ridiculous. It could be somebody's checking their watch. So now I'm speaking, but now I'm thinking, why is he checking his watch? Is he bored? Did I say something? Or, this one over here is doing this. And then it just starts to cascade, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And I wish there was a class I could take to help me, because I'll be talking and then I go off on this tangent, and then all of a sudden it breaks off to another one and another one. And then I have to stop and go, what was I saying? And then somebody who was paying attention was like, you were talking about, use of force, and then you started talking about pancakes. And I'm like, okay, thanks. So we're back to use of force. I wish there was a way to, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't want to fix it, because I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. It just, maybe I should have taken some of those classes to learn how to just be more focused on what I'm doing, and my brain's not going all over the place.
Yeah, it's hard. And I'm not saying that I've definitely improved, because when I first, like when I had to give the speech when we graduated from the academy and so forth, that one, yes, I gave the speech, but I literally typed it out word for word for word for word. Even when I first started this podcast, my first few Monday morning roll calls that I did, I had typed out word for word and delivered it, because it's just more, it takes me down level, kind of makes it a little bit easier for me. And so that is probably been the biggest change, is more of the speaking off the cuff and the ability to just kind of talk. But the rabbit trail thing, I think we all end up falling into that trap.
I actually find that I operate better when I just wing it. I've like with this, I had no idea we were going with this, and I'm thinking, I listen to some of the other podcasts. I'm like, man, he's had some bang up people on here, and as we're talking, I'm thinking, I need to. I don't know. I'm inviting myself back on your podcast for the simple fact that I feel that this was kind of just like I don't know if anybody listening, there's like, what was the theme? What did they get out of it? What words of wisdom did I impart to them? I feel like I've just kind of talked. So I'm inviting myself back on, because I need to think about.
Good.
I'm thinking about what we would talk about, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe we're going to talk about current events, or maybe we're going to talk about this, or maybe we're going to talk about that, and I didn't really come up with any type of a game plan. I was just like, okay, I kind of have a hodgepodge of ideas what we could talk about, But even with and obviously teaching is a different story because you've got to have a lesson plan, you got to go on it with it. But for the most part, even with teaching, I'll try to be somewhat organized, but just kind of, I find I work better if I wing it. And for some reason, you talked about having it listed out, so it kind of helps to bring you down a little bit. I don't understand that why, but I actually work better under pressure. When I was in high school, I would wait to the last minute to do a project, and that project would be great. If I tried to do a project like it was due 3 weeks from today, and I would start working on it little bit, I'd get like a C on it. But the project that I literally stayed up all night doing and drank a jolt on my way to school so I could stay awake to turn it in, I got an A. It's like, well, I guess I just work better under pressure when I plan this stuff out. So now that what's that done? That's just told me that procrastination is in my favor. So now I just put everything off till the very last minute, and then I just wing it.
And it works. Yeah.
It works. I think it works. I don't know. People might look at it and be like, he didn't plan any of this. He's just pulling this out of the sky, but who knows?
Yeah, but sometimes that works too.
Yeah.
We have went way over on time, but I don't want to, I'd be a bit remiss if we didn't at least talk a little bit about ART, Academy Resiliency Training, the thing you and I are both involved in at the Academy, because we both teach at the same Academy.
Yes, this Saturday we're doing it.
We are. Now this will, when this releases, it will have happened 3 weeks ago, but.
It's like in Spaceballs. We're now in the movie? No, we're now. We're fast forward to later, and we can find them in the desert. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Future's past or wherever we're going to be here.
Right.
Let's quickly talk about ART. Academy Resiliency Training. When the director brought it to me, I thought it was phenomenal. What are your thoughts on it? What is it in just a quick nutshell? And what is your involvement in it?
I thought it was a great idea that she came up with. And I wish that there was something like that was available when I went through the Academy. So I think it's absolutely fantastic. And for anybody who's listening, we are going to have not only the cadets that are going through the Academy are going to be there, but we've also invited any of their family members, friends, spouses, whatever, that want to sit in with it as well. And we're basically, and I'm saying this, you know what it is, but I'm saying it for the listeners. We're basically going to try to give them a crash course on things just to be prepared for. So we've got a lieutenant who talks about finances. I remember when I got hired, I started making a lot of money because I went from $6.32 an hour working at Kmart to the other agency that I worked for. And I think they started me off with like $14 an hour. And at 21 years old, I was like, whoa, I'm rich. And I went out and I bought myself a brand new truck in 2002, which, by the way, I still have and I still drive. Because when I buy something that big, I just hang on to it. I'm getting every dollar. So he talks a little bit about that. He talks about, scheduling issues. So you shift work, you might have to work on Christmas. And that's a big deal because now your family wants to get together with Christmas. Well, what's wrong with moving the celebration of Christmas to another day? All right, well, I'm working on the 25th, but I'm off on the 26th. And again, this was stuff that I wish we had this. One of my brothers is a firefighter and his schedule's all bollocksed up. And in the beginning, we were like, well, we're just not going to see him for Christmas, or they're not going to see me for Christmas. Where we could have just said, well, why don't we just have Christmas on like the 27th? I mean, we'll go to church and everything on the 25th if we can, but why don't we just have it on the 27th? So it tries to prepare them for that, to realize there's going to be scheduling issues, to be cognizant that if your loved one is on midnight shift, maybe, figure out a way that they can sleep and get the kids out of the house or whatever. There's a section on that. There's a section that they talk about with fitness. One of the corporals, he gets up there and he's going to talk about fitness and just eating properly, stuff like that. Another one of the retired instructors we have, she's going to get up there and she talks about I think she talks about social media. She talks about just socializing in general, maintaining friendships with people that aren't in law enforcement. You've got the part that you talk about with and I don't know how it's classified. What's it categorized? I don't want to say it's religion because I know it's not religion, but it's like spirituality. I think it's
classified as spirituality. I kind of touch a little bit on religion, but it's more about the spirit, that innermost part of all of us.
Right. And having listened to yours, I thought it was great. I really did, listening to you, and I learned a lot about you from just listening to that. And we've talked in passing. We haven't actually sat down and had coffee talk or anything like that, but we've kind of talked a little bit about stuff. But I learned a lot about you from that. So everybody's got these cool, awesome sections. I've got a section that, the last Academy, they critiqued it, and the director told me, well, they said this, that, because I had to go. and I had to leave because I had to go to buy a Jeep part that's just sitting in the yard with the rest of them. But she told me that they kind of critiqued it, and they talked about how I was just really heavy talking about what I talked about, because I opened my section up talking about law enforcement suicides. So mine is kind of like a mental health, and we went back and forth with talks about how we're going to talk about it. And mental health, when you talk to people about mental health, they think, I don't want to, it's like and I don't want to talk about that elephant in the room, or they're just not comfortable talking about it. So, but my section basically talks about mental health, talks about how, officers are more likely to kill themselves and they get killed by a bad guy out there in the street. And basically trying to find a happy balance where you can balance work and home life so you can live a nice, stable life. I think it's a great class that she put together. I'm excited for this Saturday. Like I said, I'm probably going to wear this because I don't really want to wear my uniform. I'll probably put pants on just because it'll be received better wearing pants. But
overrated though. But I appreciate
it's
that.
much more comfortable if I could show up in a pair of shorts and this. But I'm excited about it. I'm actually bringing my wife to it this week when we do it, because I kind of just want her to see it and see what she thinks about it. And I told her, I said, this is the first time I've ever, because I consider it academy teaching. This is the first time I'll have ever taught in front of anybody that wasn't really affiliated with like a police academy kind of thing, or any security guards or anything like that. So I brought her because I think she could take some stuff out of it too. So it'll be interesting. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's a great program that she's got.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And it's something that I hope catches on, because I really think it's going to benefit, like you said, not only the future law enforcement officers in the academy, but their support system. And I think that going forward, in my opinion, on a national level, that's the direction we really need to go as law enforcement. Because when people come into this career, if we can, in the beginning, give them a realistic idea of some tools in the toolbox on how to deal with these things that are coming. They've come for every one of us, no matter where we were in life, whether we were young and in our 20s or whether we were in our 30s, like I was when we came into this career. They come. And the more tools you have in that toolbox, when those problems, and they're not all problems, and when life happens, the more tools in that toolbox, the more ready you're going to be. And if you and your support system are aware of them and ready, my goodness, we could literally change law enforcement for the future. And you talk about police reform, this is where it's at. This isn't some ridiculous overstep of government. This is true police reform. It's changing the individual, changing the person, and changing their perspective, and getting them ready to be able to handle this career, and thus be better in that customer service arena and be better in the parts that make this a professional profession.
Right. So I have a question for you, and I just thought of it when you were talking about it. So
please.
You hear parents that as their kids have grown up, they talk about how they wish that they would have done less for them, so they kind of learn things on their own because they feel like they did them a disservice by doing everything for them or telling them, hey, this is going to happen, so they didn't learn it themselves. So I kind of just want to get your opinion on it, because in my opinion, I think that this, for the most part, I think it's great that we are showing these kids, because everybody's been down a different road, but it all kind of goes in the same way. And we've already blazed this trail. And instead of them having to go down that trail and get hit with that branch or get knocked off and land in the mud, we're trying to prevent that from happening. But do you think that in a way we're doing them a bit of a disservice by not allowing them to blaze their own trail and to learn from their own failures? Or do you just think they're still going to fail at stuff because who listens anymore? They're probably only listening to 50% of what we're telling them. So they're still going to have their failures. And then maybe they'll go like I did when I was a kid. Oh, I should have listened when my dad said not to do that because I learned the hard way. So I think it's beneficial. I think it's a beneficial program, but I just wonder if we just have to be cautious with how much we essentially, and I don't want to say spoon feed, but how much we prepare them, because do you think over preparing them will make them less apt to be able to work through their own problems?
I think that's a great question. And I love where you're coming from with that, because I really think that is something we need to be cognizant of and be careful with. For me, my thinking is, though, I would kind of like in about the middle part of that conversation, you were mentioning, how you half listen. And then, as you're going through school and it's like, I picked up about half of it. And then later on in life, I'm like, man, I wish I would have paid attention in algebra or, whatever the case may be. Like first time I had to measure out a lawn and I'm like, if I would have remembered one equation, I could actually do this a heck of a lot faster. But that's the way life is. And I think that what we are going over is kind of basic to the career. I don't think there is depth to it. Absolutely. In fact, your segment is extremely eye-opening and extremely important. And that's something we're going to get into because I'm definitely hoping you come back on. But that's, in my opinion, it's more of a basis. And for this one Saturday, they're not going to catch everything, but hopefully they catch a few things that are very relevant to them. And then I do think that that's where the tabletop exercises that we're talking of doing later in their academy career or area, that becomes so important, because at that point, what they're doing is they're finding those answers within themselves. So it's kind of exactly what you're describing, in my opinion, that it's not all, I'm doing this because Kris told me to, or Wayne told me to. I'm doing this because they told me, hey, this is the problem I'm going to have, and I've developed my own solution on how we're going to do it. And that's the way I look at it. I don't think that it's so much where we're leaving them on training wheels. And so when the real problem happens, they're not going to be ready for it. I just don't think, because for me, for instance, there were things that, and again, I'm the preparer guy. I like to plan way ahead. But for me, just like you said, the holiday thing, or darkening out windows, or, and I was older. So being older, I already had some life experience. So I kind of immediately took the problems and started working on my own solutions to them. But to have been able to hear other people's ideas, I think I would have merged and married those with my own. And that would have been very effective for me personally.
Yeah, I agree. I like I said, I wish that there were things that I would have known before I started doing this. And it would have, I think that I mean, now I learned them, and I don't want anybody to make the mistakes that I made, but in a way, I'm kind of glad that I made some of them, because I learned a lot from them, and it changed my life. And I am where I am now because of a lot of mistakes that I made. And I literally wake up every morning and I thank God for where I am right now, because I am living the best life I've ever lived. And I attribute that partially to the fact that I've fallen on my face a bunch of times and I learned the hard way. But I've got, it's funny, people look back and there's things that I regret, but because I didn't listen to people that tried to help me, but those things that I did made me who I am, and I'm a better person for it. So hopefully this will follow suit with them, but maybe we can give them just a little bit of tip, a little bit of trick to help them get over something, and then they can figure out the rest of it on their own. But I think you're right. I think it's going to benefit them for the most part. I think that hopefully they'll remember some of the things we say. Or like you said, they can't sleep. They can't figure out why they can't sleep. Well, they're on midnights, and then they go, oh wait, they did say black out the windows. Oh, I could black out the windows and put the bags over. Yeah. So hopefully it'll work out for them.
And I would almost liken it, as you were talking there, I was kind of thinking that I would almost liken it to like basic training. You don't learn, and I wasn't in the military, but from what I've heard and accounts that people have given me, you don't learn everything about what you're going to do in basic training. It's basic. You're getting the bottom line, these are the tools and so forth that you're going to use later. And then you're going to go off and learn a specific skill and then go to war or go to wherever that call it may take you, be it to the war or to something here in the States. Well, those basic things that you learn, those basic activities, those tools, you're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to have to go out there and learn on your own, but you're going to have that basis of that foundation that's going to be with you throughout your entire career. And that's kind of how I look at this I think it's kind of boot camp, kind of the foundation of their entire career. And that's why I like the fact that we're doing it right at the very beginning of when they come to the academy. I think the ones that we're starting with, they've only been in class a week now, correct?
I believe so. Cause I saw on Facebook that they were in like the computer lab today, and then they were doing something yesterday. So yeah, they're probably the first week, which again, I agree with you. I think it's great that and I hate to use this analogy, but we're hitting them with it right out of the gate. We're hitting them hard with it. It's like on day one of the academy out there, they have kind of like, I don't want to call them drill instructors, but they show up in uniform and they act like drill instructors, and they're yelling at them and they get them in formation, get down, give me push up, get up. And typically you get at least one cadet who just will walk into the coordinator's office and be like, hey, I'm done. This isn't for me. And they leave. So I hope that this weekend that we have, it's not a situation like that. But that being said, if somebody can tell right off the bat that this job isn't for them before they've wasted their time going through an academy and wasted all their money, then I think that it's very beneficial that we're able to do that, because we're hitting them hard with it. And I was critiqued on how I come out talking about suicides, but the fact of the matter is the number just keeps going up. So it's an ever growing problem. So, you know, and I give them, you're in the class, I give them percentages and I tell them about how it works.
Yeah.
And if maybe they decide, hey, this isn't for me, I would much rather them decide on day 1 or day 7 of the academy, hey, this isn't for me, than 3 years in when they are faced with that worst second of their life and they're like, yeah, this isn't for me. That's not when we want them to, you know, they want them to have it. So hopefully everybody in the class stays in the class and they take this as, you know, we're just trying to give them as much information as possible. But I mean, you know, it's a crapshoot. We had one cadet during defensive tactics that one of the instructors showed him a motivational video with David Goggins. And I don't know if you're familiar with David Goggins, but the guy's freaking amazing.
Yeah, he is.
Shows him a motivational, and it's a motivational video. I mean, I watched the video and I'm like, I want to go run 10 miles, you know? And then after the video is over, one of the cadets comes up to us. He's like, hey, I'm gonna step out. This isn't for me. And I see him, I said, Ryan, what did you show? I mean, you got a guy quit. This is supposed to be motivational, like, hey guys, we're gonna do this. And then the guy just like, yeah, this ain't for me. I'm not doing this. So again, if it's not for him, it's not for him. This job is, and you know, this job isn't for everybody. I look at this job as one of those things where it's a calling, and which is funny because I needed a job, and everybody asked me like, did you grow up wanting to be? I was like, no, I didn't like cops. They got behind me when I was driving and I was all scared. I remember getting tickets when I was younger for speeding. I just didn't like cops. And so it wasn't a calling. I was like, no, I just kind of fell into it. And I was like, I needed a job and it worked out. But now having done it, I think that it was, and not to get, you know, too crazy, but I think it was like a hidden calling. It was like one of those real quiet voices that's saying, you should, you know, kind of like Field of Dreams, you know, hey, build it, they'll come. You should do this. Because it is a calling. You know, we don't do this for the money. You know, we could probably do landscaping. I was talking to a guy yesterday about pools. He's like, oh, you can start your own pool business. You can be making a lot of money doing something else, but it's not about the money. You know, it's like it's a calling. And some of these cadets, they have it. Some of them don't. I think some of them that think they don't, they're just not listening hard enough, or they haven't given it time for that voice to really hit them.
Kris, I couldn't agree with you more. We are way over on time, but I want to ask you
Sorry, Wayne.
No, you're fine. I want to ask you the one question that I ask everyone. What is the one takeaway, the one thing that law enforcement officers can do that will make a difference in their personal life?
Have balance. In my opinion, for law enforcement officers, is to have balance. Don't be that cop who is just ate up with getting emails from work sent to your phone, that when you're sitting there at your kid's recital and you're watching, you paid a ridiculous amount of money for your kid to learn how to dance, and they're up there looking like they're having a freaking seizure, but you're still watching your kid dance because you're proud. Oh, you're doing great. Don't be looking at your cell phone to check an email about who's wanted, because you're never going to see whatever the hell this is. You're never going to see that again. You know what I mean? Take that day off. Don't save up your days. Oh, I get paid for my days off when you retire. Take that day off and go watch your kid play soccer. If you made plans with your family to go on a vacation, go on the vacation. It might be miserable. You might be at Disney World and it's 108 degrees and everybody's wearing some BS mask and you're thinking, why am I here? But the kids are loving it, and you're going to be able to look back at that and you're going to say, I had a great time. Find a happy balance. It's not, so many guys just get enveloped with this job. That's all they know. That's all they do. They let everything else go by the wayside, and all they do is this job. And I think that's one of the most unhealthy things you can do. You have to find a happy balance. You have to have a job. You have to make money. You have to be dedicated to this job. You have to want to do this job. You have to do it well, but you also have to do things outside of this job. So again, balance that stuff out. Don't be heavy with the work, because when the work is heavy, everything else is going to suffer. And then if everything else is heavy, then the work is going to suffer. There has to be a happy balance. Go in, do your job, I get 4 days off because we work for 4 days. And one of my biggest faults was I would occupy all 4 of my days with work. If I wasn't working an extra job, I was teaching at the academy. And that's all I did. I would maybe give myself 1 day off a month. And that was typically because I did a scheduling error and I didn't mean to give myself a day off. And I was absolutely miserable. And it wasn't until I learned, no, I need to start. And you can work an extra job, but if I have 4 days off, now maybe I'll teach for 1 day or 2 days on my 4 days off and still give myself 2 days off to spend with my family. Find that balance, because when you get ate up with the job, that's where everything else starts to suffer. Your kids are going to resent you. Your spouse is going to resent you. Your family's going to not going to forget about you, but they're going to wish that you were there, and you're going to miss all this stuff that's happening. Yes, we have a job to do, but guess what? If you don't go that day because you want to take off for your kid, they'll get somebody else to fill your zone. What's more important, So balance. To wrap it up. Sorry, I keep talking. I could talk forever. You know that.
I do. But Kris, that is great advice, and thank you. That is very important, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's something that I've seen in my own life. I've seen in the lives of others, and I really appreciate it. I really thank you for taking the time. Thank you for coming on here. I think this has been great. I do hope that you'll come on again, but I really appreciate you coming on this podcast.
Wayne, listen, I had a blast. Thanks for having me. I hope to be on again. And like I said, for the listeners, I'll have something prepared next time, just some real golden nugget to give them. Like I said, I feel like I kind of just talked about nothing the entire time. So but I had fun. I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do this again. Thanks, Kris.
Thanks, Wayne.